Ken Pennington, the CIO at US Silica. I get the privilege of getting to moderate a lot of these sessions. So I've got a great group here. Hopefully, as we finish this up, you go, wow, they are all ours. They are all strategic and transformative CIOs and CISOs as we go through. So first, I want to introduce my panel, let them tell you a brief bit about themselves, and then we'll dive into the meat of our topic. So I think you last, Maria, since you already got to introduce yourself. So let's start with Al Vincent. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Right. It's nice to meet you all. So every time I come to one of these, they put me on a panel.
Yeah,
I guess someone was sick. I think they had Astros fever, okay? Whoever it was, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
But no, it's a great opportunity, actually. I love to speak because you get a chance to kind of message what you think and then you see what comes back, right? You always learn something when you do that. So I was at Plains All-American for 22 years. I wore a bunch of hats. I came in because they had a big trading loss, rogue trading loss, so I was kind of the chief risk officer. And then I ended up being kind of a problem solver early on so the company could resume its growth. And I took over the technology, and so I ended up wearing kind of the CIO and the CISO hats. And then the last 3 years I was there, I really was playing kind of a transformational officer role, where I had taken the guy, run one of our big affiliates who were merging with the company, put him over all of the converged IS North American group, really started that process. And then I kind of took the people process business model changes part, because that's where 80% of our issues were. And so kind of lived there for a while. And then there was just too much going on, and Houston was just about to blow up. And there, I just saw all sorts of opportunity and a lot of dysfunction. Where I thought I could help more broadly and didn't want to work for just one operator. So I ended up telling them, listen, I think it's time for me to go. I've been here for 22 years. And, after they freaked out a little bit and I agreed to stay for 8 months and had a good orderly transition, I've created an advisory firm. I'm basically just kind of doing my own thing, advising tech firms, operators, service firms. Kind of the model is like 5 to 20 hours a month, basically, just being a resource to the C-suite.
And Antonio Martin.
Good evening, thank you. First of all, thank you Elevate IT for inviting us. Really appreciate it. Thank you all for being over here. We now hopefully will make this better than the Astros or the Texans game. I'm sure we're going to make it better than the Texans game.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a safe.
Thank you for being here up for Texas Day.
So I'm the Chief Information Officer for US MedEquip. I've been there for the last 10 months. We're private equity owned. And one of the things I love about sports is that if I go to a stadium, I can tell you if I work for that company or interview for that company with all the advertising they have. So my role has always been going to organizations who are having an issue in IT, kind of clean them up, put them in the right path, or what I think is the right path, and then I'll go to the next challenge.
All right, Daniel.
All right. My name is Dr. Daniel Harrison. I'm new to Houston. I was just a pass.
Daniel, eat the microphone.
Okay. I was the past CISO for Harris County. I just left there a few months ago. I'm now the director for Department of Homeland Security through NTT Data Services. I've spent a lot of time working for Department of Defense, both the Air Force and the Army. I specialize in OT, cybersecurity, and robotics. So I'm new here. This is my first time attending this type of meeting. And thank you, Robin, for inviting me to this.
You're awesome. Thank you.
And Maria.
Okay, well, I already introduced myself, but I will say that I just recently retired from the American Bureau of Shipping, where I was there over 11 years as their Chief Information Officer. But my background's always been in oil and gas. I started out with Exxon, was there through the merger with Mobil, went to BP, ended up at the American Bureau of Shipping, but stayed pretty close to oil and gas nonetheless. But being a CIO has been a great experience for me, and I'm just happy to have been there and been able to take retirement from them. So welcome.
All right. Well, thank you all. Appreciate every one of you here being on the panel. And as we get ready to talk about our topic of to thrive, hire strategic CIOs and CISOs, I, just like the rest of our panel, have been a CIO for many years, and own security as well. So been through a number of those major transformations, helping grow an organization from 6 billion to 20 billion in revenue, lots of different changes. So I think we've got some interesting themes here that we're going to talk about, and what it means to be that type of leader for our organizations, and why that's extra valuable for them, and what we can do to better market ourselves, develop your leadership to be in those roles, and give some examples of where that's made a difference. But before we get going with that, I always like to have a little fun with our panels and let you get to know everybody a little better. We'll talk a bit about what I call it my lightning round. So these are 1, 2 word answers that I want from everybody. Tony, no big, long responses as we go. Just to get to know each other and have a little fun. Yes, there'll be some technology. Yes, there'll be a little bit of sports going on there. But first, for anyone who knows me well, knows I like to wear funky good socks. Daniel, you're giving me a run for my money. We didn't even prep for that. So Luis is throwing up a glass of wine. He always checks on what socks I'm wearing as we go. They're kind of tame today, but those are pretty good. So let's start with the lightning round. Everyone ready? 1, 2 word answers, really easy, nothing crazy. iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
iPhone.
Well, see, easy. Digital transformation, love the phrase or hate it?
Hate it.
Hate it.
There we go, all right. Here, favorite book?
Green Months by Matthew McConaughey.
All right. Favorite book?
You have to say the same thing. We've been given the same
We're not doing that again, Antonio. You did that one.
I would say the 7 habits of.
The mic.
Hold the mic up.
Oh yeah, the 7 habits of
Highly effective.
highly effective
Okay.
people. Yes, that's
My favorite book is the Bible.
Glad I had a chance to think about it. Zorba the Greek.
All
I don't know
right.
what that says.
We know a lot, Al. Last movie you saw?
Man, pass. I've been watching Netflix series.
Last movie?
It was just on. I think it's the night of something. It's on Netflix. I forgot.
Clip that was not memorable, I guess.
Yeah, that's
So don't watch that one. Antonio?
Black Adam.
Black Adam, all right.
Tom Cruise.
Top Gun.
Yeah, Top Gun.
Maverick.
Top Gun. Yeah.
Mine was
Maverick.
Love and Thunder.
It was-
That was the last one. All right, so kind of getting into our sports theme, we've already talked about the Astros playing today. We all expect, I assume, for the Astros will win the World Series.
Yes.
In Game 6 or Game 7?
7.
7.
6.
7.
All right, it's going to be exciting.
Phillies.
Hey now, don't make us kick you off the panel.
Furniture.
But tonight there's also a Texans-Eagles game, and we know Texans have not been that great. Texans win or lose tonight?
Lose.
Lose.
That's an easy one. Lose.
Yeah, lose.
Yeah,
The
they
Eagles
were-
are like
yeah.
7-0.
Sad part is I'm rooting for 2 Eagles on my fantasy team, so But this is actually a historic game tonight. This is the first time in some number of times this has occurred where a World Series game has occurred the same day as an NFL game has occurred, and the 2 cities that are playing against each other have been in both games. So you've got the Philadelphia Phillies against the Houston Astros, Houston Texans against the Philadelphia Eagles. How many other times has it occurred? If you watched the game last night, you know the answer.
No idea.
I didn't watch the game.
No?
If I remember correctly, I think it's the first one.
No?
Second. If it's higher, I win, right?
It's higher. Yes, this wasn't Price is Right. Price is
I
Right.
did 2 or not. He said 1.
It's happened six other times. This is the 7th time, and the Phillies have been. This makes it the 2nd time that they have been in there against the Eagles. It was the Phillies and the. I can't even see my own. It's dark
You're
here.
right. The question was wrong.
Where was it? The Phillies played. I don't remember who they played now.
So how many times was it?
Philadelphia
7
Phillies
versus
against the Yankees, and New York Giants against the Eagles in that year, which was, wow, it's dark over here. My eyes are getting really bad.
Need some glasses.
I do. So, but it's the 7th time that it's happened. So it was really, I thought it was a pretty cool stat that I saw last night.
How
Thought
many
we'd add that.
times did the same team win versus opposite team?
Oh, I don't know.
Like Philly.
You're asking me to do a lot of extra research for this.
Thank you.
All right.
There you go.
And last, PC or Mac?
PC.
Mac.
Both.
I'm both as well. All right. So, oh wait, one more. I missed my one more. Reality or hype? The metaverse for business.
It is hype right now.
Extensively hype.
Right now, hi.
All right. All right, now let's get into our topic and have fun. That's always fun. I love to get a little bit of everybody laughing. And it just worked out really well with the Astros and Texans playing today. So as we think about the topic today, thrive, hire strategic CIOs and CISOs. We really needed some CEOs in the room that could listen to this. So they'd be better prepared as they think about who's next to help lead their organizations from an IT and security perspective. But we wanted to break it down into two sections as we talk tonight. One, what does it mean to be that strategic CIO, and what real value, and where's that differentiator by having that for the organization? And then the second part, going through, well, what do we need to do to perform in at that level? How do we market ourselves? How do we develop those skills? What's unique between the CIO and the CISO in that aspect? So let's start right out with what does it actually mean to be a strategic and transformative CIO or CISO? And Maria, I'll start with you.
Okay, well, I'll tell you guys a story about this because I used to brag about the fact that I was a strategic partner to the business. It was on my resume, and then I realized that the business wants more than that. So CIOs in the past were actually tasked with just helping to maintain the business, take care of IT, and then they were later asked to grow the business, come up with new ideas, and now they're being asked to reinvent the business. And if you figure that out, then you're a transformative CIO.
Very good, thank you. Daniel?
All right. Do any of you know the animal called chameleon?
Yeah.
To be a CIO or a CISO, you have to be able to adapt to changing environment. Back in the day, CIO depends on the 5 nines, availability of the network to support business processes. Today, you have to understand the business itself. You have to be able to design programs that support the business and the infrastructure, and be able to position the organization to achieve competitive advantage. Today's CIO or CISO is totally different from the CIO, the CISO of the past. So that is what I call transformative CISO or CIO.
Thank you. Antonio?
Yeah, I second what they've been saying about being transformative. Transformative to me in my career, my experience has been when you go to an organization and they're expecting that you're going to do a certain thing, and then you find ways to reinvent the company, bring new sources of revenue, and being able to create that progression in an organization when they don't even expect it. Sometimes when I'm talking about this topic, I always try to remind CIOs or CEOs as well that if any company that you work for think they're brick and mortar, they're dinosaurs. Every company is a technology company. The question is, how do you bring that to their level, the way they speak, the way they understand it, and not only that, prove it by increasing the revenues of the organization or the services of the organization.
Thank you. Al, why don't you, same question.
Yeah, so I think you want to be impactful no matter what, right? And so, like when I came into the role, I already worked as risk officer with planes that had big trading loss, and it was a small company. They'd been rapidly growing, and we were trying to really resume that growth. So we had to fix these problems. And then we went on a real tear for 12 years. We had double-digit growth every beating earnings guidance every single quarter. So, and I wanted the tech piece because I saw all the opportunities leveraging off of that, combining that with opportunities to re-engineer the company around process and improve people. But like tech's not going to solve that. It's not going to solve poor performing teams. It's not going to solve groups not working together, performance issues, stuff like that. So it's a lever that you have to combine all that with. So, I'd already kind of been in a number of areas that have been very impactful. I wanted tech to be just as impactful. So I think you got to come into it with that expectation that you're really going to make a huge difference. Transformative these days, when I think about it, it's one of the reasons that I left and I'm kind of out there because of the opportunity, because I think emerging tech really gives a massive opportunity to truly transform. And you have to attack it differently than traditional IT projects, I think. Usually you see what's happening in Houston around management teams outside of the CIO, and a lot of those people still view it as a selection process. I'm going to select the tech, I'm going to select the vendor, or I'm going to select this. And it really isn't about that anymore. It's about more disrupting yourself. So you have to really figure out where is somebody going to disrupt me. What are we not doing well? And management teams get kind of defensive about that. It requires a lot of transparency. And so I think you got to have skill sets that enable you to do that, to then leverage off the value of the tech. So that's people, process. There's actually a lot of risk management involved in that, a lot of change management. And I think, so to me, it's also about new skill sets, having new skill sets to be able to capture the value that's there. Because tech right now, in the last 3 years, it solves a lot of problems we haven't been able to solve. So the people that really kind of generate those capabilities, you can be a real game changer for your company.
Well, hang on to that. Since you've got the microphone, I'm going to ask you the next follow-up before we go. But I think those definitions were all similar, each with your own little bit of spin based on your experiences throughout your career. But I love that disruption, understanding the industry, knowing the technology and how it can help solve problems today. But I think a big part to being that strategic and transformative technology leader is being able to foresee that these are the things we need, being able to be out there enough, understanding your business, understanding your industry, your customers, and the competitive landscape. And I think that's one of the unique capabilities or attributes of this role. So when we have that as a CIO or CISO in an organization, what distinct value does the company get from having that versus the CIO, as an example, who's really just about run and maintain?
Yeah, so like I'm speaking at a supply chain conference on Monday and a cyber one on Tuesday. But the supply chain conference is really interesting to me because I see a lot of dysfunction in supply chain, even though, you've probably seen more money thrown at supply chain with VCs and everything, than any other tech area, because it's been tough to raise money for, startups, but a lot of it's going to supply chain. But especially in oil and gas, heads of supply chains are kind of still stuck in the old world. And you see this a lot, where they're trying to keep their head count down and they're trying to raise up, negotiate contracts, capital projects.
Yeah, but Al, is that just for energy, or when you say supply chain, is that across the board?
I think it's across the board, but particularly what I'm seeing in energy is there'll be a survey where management teams say it's our number one issue. It's why, we're missing parts, we're missing people, we can't drill these wells, but at the same time, you don't see them reinventing themselves the way that they need to. Because you're not in the world, and I'm talking a lot about supply chain, I was going to use it as an example. So you're not in that world where you have big capital programs and where resources supply is easy to get, transportation's a fraction of the cost. It's more about operationalizing the function, about risk and resiliency and getting ahead of things. So tech now gives you the ability to do that, like monitor using health-like metrics your suppliers. Like that's a game changer. You could never do that before. And that's why everybody shows up in the news. It's very reactive what's happening to them. Ford has 45,000 cars or trucks that didn't, billions of dollars hit to earnings because they were missing parts and badges and all this sort of stuff. They couldn't fully complete them. Those stories are all over the place. But tech is there, it allows that. But you have these groups that are resisting change, you have, a lack of vision, some companies don't know about the tech that's there, so there's a lot of problems that have been solved that could enable those companies that really make the movement towards being more digitally savvy. And somebody, is going to transform that in energy, and get a jump on the competition. So the CIO's in a great spot. The CIO's in the spot where if you understand the technology that's there, and you can tap in and harness those skills to be able to change behaviors around the tech and everything, you can really be a game changer for your company, add tremendous value, but it's a very difficult thing to do. Sometimes you're the only one that kind of gets it. You got to find allies, and it's tough.
Yeah, I know. Antonio, so what do you think the next steps are? I mean, literally, I'm taking over.
I see that. I'm just going to sit back and ask
Al
you
talks like forever, right? So.
We were missing George.
I have my next round of questions ready to go.
Well, I'll shut up.
We're just teasing.
Look, I'm telling you, right now, between now and the next year, wake up. There's wake up a day, huge transformation. Wake up a day, huge transformation. So the CIOs and the CISOs, right, are going to be key stakeholders in what's going to be happening in the next year.
Let me debate 2 points. Number one, I don't think CIOs or CISOs are going to be any different in the next 10 years that we've been in the last 20 years.
Well, that's a problem.
Because we haven't, I don't think that we have been recognized for the work we've done. This world of technology and social media has opened some doors that they've always been there. There's been transformations for the last 100 years. Now technology is taking a predominant piece. The second part that I cannot debate is, yes, I agree with you. CIOs, we need to know our business. We need to know our industry. But one of the things that has helped my career tremendously, and I make fun about how many companies I work for, is that in every company, in every industry that I've been in, I learned something that actually applied to the next industry. Some of the things that we're doing today at US MediQuip, and I've only been there for 10 months, and we're already gone through new ERP implementation, EDI implementation, and the acquisition of a company that doubled our size. And we finished the first part of the acquisition within 30 days. Well, that happened because of my experience and the experience of my team that we got in, believe it or not, on the waste management side and oil and gas. So I think that where we have the advantage with our experience and the areas that we see around the company is that we're some of the few people that can put all the pieces of the puzzle together and being able to tell a story that nobody has been able to tell for the last few years. We don't want to tell it, or nobody has been able to recognize that story that we've been telling. I think we live in a world that doors have been opening little by little, and that has given us the opportunity to do what we know how to do best, and eliminate some of the things, some of the jargon that is used in the industry, like digital transformation. We don't use those words because we know that what we're doing is business transformation.
No, I think your point of the experience first is true. To get to that strategic transformative CIO CISO, you weren't just at this one company for you had some other experiences. There's been more to lean on and leverage as you go through with that. And the funny you mentioned the digital transformation, which I brought up. I actually did an interview this morning for CIO Magazine for some things, and then they asked me about digital transformation. Why didn't I mention it? And I said, because it's business transformation, digital's a tool, and we've all been doing over and over, and we talked through that. But so interesting stuff on how the value is, or that extra value from having it in this experience. But I want to ask Maria next, what if we don't? What's the negative to that organization who doesn't have that strategic or transformative CIO?
I think they mentioned it earlier that if we're not doing these things, that any company that's not realizing how technology is actually something that can help them grow their business or transform their business, then they're going to get left behind. There are industries that are really doing some very cool things, disruptive things, and if those people succeed, their competitors are going to be left by the wayside because they didn't figure it out.
Yeah.
So I think the CIO role is really important because we bring things to the table in terms of the experience we have with project management, with governance. I mean, there's a lot of ideas out there, and it's great to stand up, incubation teams. But the whole same discipline that we've been following all along, and what it actually takes to build a system that's going to be reliable and scalable and secure. Those things, those requirements don't go away just because the business is going through some transformation. They need us just as much as we need them to be effective.
And Daniel, what do you think about that from the CISO role? If we didn't have a very strategic transformative CISO, what's that going to do negatively impact the organization?
What I would say to that is the value of a CISO can never be overestimated. The reason being, as a CISO, you have to understand the business requirement. You have to strategically align the cybersecurity program to line up with the business, overall business objective. You have to have a steering committee that have all the stakeholders' involvement in it to be able to implement a cybersecurity resilient and business resilient program. To do that, you have to have a CISO that know how to do all these things. Without that qualities, I'm afraid it's impossible for you to do that. Especially, I've seen several forms of types of CISOs. Some from DoD environment, they are so used to just using RMF. It's not a business oriented. They are not thinking about maximization of profit. All they care about is operational stability. All they care about is authorization to operate. So money is not a motivation factor. So they don't have that pressure to be able to be a transformative CISO compared to folks that work in the real world environment, the business environment, where money is a key factor. You need to have a CISO who has the ability and understanding of the business framework, the laws, regulations, standards, and best practices in order to be able to execute the program. So that's what I would say the right CISO is.
Very good. Yeah, you hear a theme between the CIO and the CISO role as we think about this. There is still the nuts and bolts of the technology, the things we have to do, but those that become that strategic are also able to better understand their business. And we might think about security as very operational, as you first described, but to truly make it transformative and not be security for security's sake. We think about the brand and business sustainability and brand protection and our digital safety. And as you think about the CIO, really who's strategic and transformative, making those unique recommendations and driving changes in our organization, whether they be adding ways for new revenue, they're finding ways to make the organization run more effectively and efficiently that allow it to scale and move into new markets. And it's not just about, yep, email is working. There's so much more to that. And I think as we go through, and for my own career, where we've seen some changes in that, or I kind of knew we were doing the right things. I was in a situation with our CFO and CEO at a previous company. We were talking about market expansion, and it was myself thinking of the tech, asked there to be about the technology, and a bunch of our sales leaders in different regions going, well, how are we looking at the competitor? What are they doing? And they all kind of looked around with blank stares because they didn't know. And I said, oh, well, we're competing with this company, and this company, and this company in this market, and here's what they're doing, and here's the places they're playing, and here's the tech they're doing to get ahead of us. And our CFO goes, I didn't expect to hear that from you. I wanted to hear that from them, but thank you. And that's what, for me, I knew we were doing the right things and understanding that business. Maria, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually going to echo something that Antonio said earlier, that the CIO can't do it alone. I mean, transformation occurs when there is tight partnership and collaboration between the business and IT. Without that, it's just not effective. IT can't move the ball by themselves, and the business can't move the ball without us either.
And something that also, I guess I'm the debater today. So
You're going to debate what she
I'm
said.
going to debate what she said.
was giving
Because she was giving.
She was commenting on your comment, so you're debating yourself now.
I've been in this warpath for the last 15 years of my career, which is, we always talk about the business and IT. There's no business and IT. We are the business. We are a function of the business like anybody else. The moment that we can drive the message, and you mentioned being chameleon, I call it being flexible. The day that we can show IT as being flexible, just like any part of the industry, like any part of the organization, there's no separation between business and IT. And normally people ask me, well, what about IT alignment? That's the other two words that used to be before digital transformation. Like, why do we talk about alignment and not IT integration? What's the difference? When you walk into an organization, the first thing, when I walk into my job and my CEO and the news, what's your mission statement for IT? And I look at it, my mission statement is what's on the wall, it's the same as yours. I'm not going to change the goals of the organization, I'm not going to show where we're going, that's what we're doing. Because if I start doing something different, or thinking in a way that is different, we're not going to go anywhere. And that's when we end up in the role that sometimes a lot of CIOs end up, which get replaced by somebody else because they didn't have a vision of how the company was going.
Okay, so let me change my term. It would sound better if I say
Can I have my 30 seconds?
cross-functional teams. That's what I meant by that.
I know.
Right? So if you bring all the functions together, then you can come up with some really powerful ideas. But independently, I don't think you can.
No, we do. No, I agree with Carol.
No, those are great. Yes, I definitely did not mention the IT alignment one earlier. You know, but I agree. I'm big of it's not IT in the business. We are an organization. I talk to my teams really about understanding how the organization cash register works. And it has to work effectively and efficiently. And everyone, whether you are the CEO, you're the CIO, you're the janitor, you're the service desk, you're HR, you're accounting, we all have a role in making that work effectively and efficiently. The better, the more strategic and transformative CIOs and CISOs understand that and are able to communicate and tell that story and educate their teams in order to do that. So what you've heard so far is a bit about the value and what it is. So I want to stop for a moment and see if there's any questions, and then we'll go into, well, how do we get there? What can we do? How do we develop ourselves? What experiences have we all had that have put us into those positions, and what recommendations or maybe even some advice we wish we had gotten a long time ago that we can share. Are there any questions from the audience about the concept of a strategic and transformative CIO? Ashish.
As a technology leader, what has been the most difficult decision that you have made, and what was the outcome?
To whom do you want to answer first?
We'll go. Al, why don't you get it?
Most difficult decision. It's always letting people go. I think. You know, that's acquisitions when you have to let them go, or letting good people go for various reasons. Most difficult. You know, I think you were probably after most difficult, complex decision. You know, I think you just find yourself going against everybody else a lot of the times, and you have to come up with an insight that they don't have. And you know, and even then, you know, there's going to be pride there that kind of makes them want you to lose, you know, and so you're kind of, it's an uphill battle there. But I can think of a number of them. I mean, some of them, you know, like when Sarbanes-Oxley happened, and nobody really thought about what the IT implications were, and they opened it up to all the big four accounting firms to interpret what that meant, you know, and with a couple months to go until everything was finalized, We pulled together, we used, kind of a Houston community, we pulled together the heads of all those firms, put them in front of all the CIOs, and made them answer all these questions. And then, we got some leverage off of that. We pushed back mark-to-market accounting. That was a big deal, because we're the only ones that didn't do that. Right now, I think it's pipeline industry. TSA is a group that had 6 people that didn't understand cyber 3 years ago, and a lot of big companies are structuring their whole cyber programs around not having a blemish with the recommendations. And they're making some really bad decisions out there, taking away access from people that need it for things that can't get patched because they aren't patched. I mean, it's just real poor. So I think it's when you're in that situation where you really kind of have to take a stand, own some risk. Everybody else wants to go along with it, where, if you end up being right, then you've really made a difference for your organization.
Anyone else care to answer on that difficult decision?
Yes. This happened just recently. It was about CIOs information system, criminal justice information system. When I came to the county, I realized somebody decided to buy, the county involved 36 cities, towns, and villages. So there are several divisions, several business objectives, and several goals for each area of the county. Somebody decided to buy a system that was very, very functional. But then it doesn't meet any security requirements. And when I was aligning the security controls against the system, they fell miserably. Also, I tried to say, okay, let me pull up their SOC 2 Type 2 report. They have 0 report. And this system contains a lot of PI information, a lot of law enforcement information. So I have to kill the whole system. And there was a lot of costs involved, but I have to make that a difficult decision.
Yeah, those are challenges. We've all got plenty. I had to do one. We were doing an acquisition of a refinery, and our COO was he was blinded by this desire to have this asset in our portfolio. Excuse me. And said we felt that we were going to get a certain throughput out there. We're going to have this return on this investment, and we were going around the executive committee, and is this a go or no? And I voted no. And he said, well, why? I said, well, I'll put no with an asterisk. No at the current offer price. It's going to cost us about another $20 million in technology enhancements, operational technology and IT, in order to get this facility to be able to do what you want in the time frame that you want. And that's really difficult when you stand up to a revenue driver in the organization. But you've got to know your business well enough, which again ties back into the theme. Other questions? Yes.
Would you think artificial intelligence would replace some of the business function in a more rapid way in the next 3 years?
Anyone?
I'll take that one. Because some of what I'm doing right now is, I was always a big tech investor for the last 20 years, and felt like I kind of developed an eye for it over the year, because eventually, like, the earnings calls, I'd be on with the CEOs, and they'd be asking me questions, because I represent buyers, and I represent a lot of functions. So right now, a big part of what I'm doing is trying to eye emerging tech, advise, be aligned with them, game-changing tech, and then if you know the internals of the operators and how it solves problems, it's just an architecting, designing, and mapping, as long as you got a long-term view. So I've kind of gone from cyber to industrial automation to AI, and then I've got a kind of a thought on why transformations fail. I say there's 5 reasons. A lot of it's people process stuff. So you can't get the value for the tech if you're dealing with all that dysfunction internally, and that's usually a big portion of it. So I do think that there's a lot of dysfunction around AI and machine learning models that take place, where you have to have an agile experimental approach. If you've got a management team, these are just some examples. If you got a management team that can't take risks, can't be experimental, like if they took a Myers-Briggs personality test, they'd all be on the engineering side, or they try to take then you're not going to be able, because it's all about innovation, setting parameters, letting teams operate within those. It's more like a process of elimination rather than creation. Like they're trying to eliminate, like Google eliminates, they have 100 deals that get killed every year, right? And until they find the right one. Or if you're taking those and putting them through a governance model where only the safest ideas are going to rise to the top, there's no way any of that's going to work in that sort of environment. You're investing a lot of money, it's going to be disastrous, never make any progress, and that's mostly what's happened. Now I think there are some really interesting models out there the last couple of years in machine learning AI. For one thing, it's been integrated into a lot of actual applications, and so you just get more insights tied to the data that's coming in. Like supply chain, I was talking about, that's a great example, because there's lots of better information. You get emissions information on satellites now. It used to be just self-reported by the companies, and they weren't telling the truth. Or you get know your counterparty, your credit, cyber comes from BitSight, security scorecard, all this stuff. You can see all this, so you get better data. So these apps that have AI kind of built in, you can leverage off of them more, rather than just reporting and stuff that you used to get. The other thing is that for the pure AI that sits on top of those apps, there's just, it's more of an integration and kind of an outsourced, where you're getting insights back. This model that I think works a lot better for organizations, because we're all resource constrained, and this is a form of externalization. But you got to know where you can be disrupted. You got to know where the value is, and you got to be able to dive in there. And you can't have people that run those functions resisting change. They got to be in there trying to drive value with the CIO, or else you're just not going to get. But I think that's happening big time in certain pockets.
Definitely is. Thanks, Al. There's another question back over here. Did I see? Yes.
Yeah. CISO reporting to CIO, what's your thought on that? If not CIO reporting?
All right, let's go right through.
Maria, where's your report?
They're going to come back to the CIO anyway, so might as well report to the CIO, in my opinion, because that's the natural inclination. If the CEO would know, would actually go to the, whatever, if it's the chief, some have a report to the chief general counsel, but it still comes back, and this was caused by an IT problem, it ends up back in our yard anyway, so may as well be fully accountable and responsible.
Because CISO is perceived as a technologist versus as a business partner.
Correct.
Where should it report?
He shouldn't report to CIO.
CIO.
He shouldn't.
Shouldn't. Okay.
Yes.
Anybody buy?
Because if I have to audit you, I cannot audit my boss. There's always going to be some level of favoritism, disagreement, and animosity between the CISO, and I see it play out a lot of times. So,
Okay.
So who should report then?
CEO,
Chief Risk Officer, Chief Operations Officer.
Not all companies have a chief risk officer.
No? All right, Antonio, your opinion?
I agree with him. I don't think that the CISO should report to the CIO. I think that CISOs bring a service of auditing, of guidance to the CIO. And from a legal perspective, he goes to jail, I won't, because he's the one telling me. So I'm okay with that too.
All right, and Al, where should it report?
Yeah, so I don't think CISOs get enough recognition. I'm actually involved in trying to create an awardees for CISOs right now. Because the practical reality is a lot of them do report to the CIOs in Houston, and they don't have the budget and authority that the CIOs do, and they're in a tough spot. Because more than the CIO position, I think the CISO position, when you have to make it, when something goes wrong, nobody understands what you do in your company.
Okay.
So wait.
It's the only area that
I'm
has
gonna
money
step
about
in
there.
there.
Well, it does. I think the answer is it
Say
depends.
yes to is cybersecurity these days.
I think the answer is it depends.
So we need a
Cybersecurity.
CRO, a CIO reporting to a CRO. Everybody reports to the chief risk officer.
No.
That's
Well, I think the answer is it depends. Because every organization and culture is different, and the roles and the ability of the people are different. I'll get you 1 second, Doug. I think it differs. It depends on the organization. In my organization, my CEO reports to me, and to be perfectly honest, he's not a strategic and transformative CISO yet, and so he's in the right spot for where we are. Ultimately, yes, it's either a chief risk officer or it's more like internal audit with a very dotted line right to the audit committee and into there, or it's to general counsel.
Yeah, I would be right on.
Doug?
Yeah, I was just going to say, in my industry, the regulators won't let you have that reporting relationship. You have to have them separate.
So it'd be interesting for publicly traded companies as some of the SEC proposals related to cybersecurity come out and go to
The
play.
reason why you don't want the
Oh, I got too many here. Go ahead,
The
Mark.
reason why you don't want the CISO reporting to the chief audit officer or that department, what do you think of audit, Ken? Big brother coming in to crash. The CISO should be someone that enables the business to advance at the speed of whatever. You can't have, audit's not.
I wasn't suggesting reporting to audit, I said reporting to the audit committee at the board level, not internal audit,
I believe
directly.
it's someone like operations or even the CEO, depending on the company.
Okay. Question?
So if I recall correctly, the SEC's got a set of proposals out there for cybersecurity.
Yes, they do.
Right? Talking about your board members have to have, somebody on the board's got to be cybersecurity conscious at least. Do you see if those regulations, as they're currently specified, if they're implemented, if that's going to force a change of CISO reporting?
Well, the proposal doesn't lay out a change in reporting. It does lay out board level of knowledge, and as you said, not very well knowledgeable. It does lay out some things around certifications internally, but it does not say anything about reporting.
Well, the question
but I
was-
think ultimately it does.
Yeah, it's not that it directly says that, but do you think the implication is it might cause a change in reporting structure?
It might, and I think again, it goes to the strategic and transformative, the CIO who understands the technical operations, can communicate with the board, can think and understand the business side, the way you described it, will have that opportunity to report differently. Those that don't will be looked at more as a director of security, and they will continue to report into the CIO. So, anyone have any last comments on this? And I want to drive to the challenges.
Question, in your examples, does the IT security team report to the CISO?
They should, and the reason why, you have to build a program that entails governance, risk, and compliance.
Yeah, so it depends on what their responsibilities are, because I can tell you, it's so muddled between the lines between IT security and IT operations. You know, the IT security people want to select things by, buy products, et cetera, but they want operations to implement it, and it's just a constant argument. So if you separate them, then I don't know who the tiebreaker's going to be.
Let me tell you what the challenge really is. We talk to, like for example, Maria comes from ABS. I work at Petrobras America, 6th largest oil company in the world, with very strict lines of reporting. I work now for US Med Equipment, which are a smaller organization. The problem that we have in the organizations is that anywhere you go, the CFO reports to the CEO. The CFO has a way to communicate to the CEO and the board on what the progress of the organization is. But when you come to IT, it's all over the place. So the problem is, as an IT organizations, as an IT industry, we have not been able to develop a set of standards and organizational methods. We say we have COVID, we said that we have ITIL, we have all those things. But in terms of the corporate governance, we haven't built a set of tools that a company, depending on their size, decide where the CIO or the CISO should be, and what are the kind of reporting strategies that we need to have.
Again, I go back to it depends.
It depends.
It depends.
But
All right. So, Al, did you have one more comment to this, and then I can we'll go on to the
I'll
next
try
one?
my best to keep this short.
All right.
I give a whole talk on boards. Yeah, so I think that the rule, we don't, like if you're a pipeline company, you don't put the integrity management and how you do the science in front of the board. You don't pull them into that level of detail. And so I think, companies are going to have to figure out, boards, really focus, like you guys are saying, on who's your competition, what are they doing, what's your customer want. It's very externally focused. And I think that's a challenge, honestly, for CISOs that look at maturity-based frameworks sometimes, as kind of incentivized to fill control gaps, sometimes on CIOs text for text's sake. And it takes a little while to be able to communicate at a board level, even when you come in good at it. And so I think there's some development needed. To your point about some are not quite ready, and then that they'll probably report to the CIO. But then there's also a bit of a conflict of interest depending on how the CIO looks at security versus all the other fun stuff, right? And budgeting. So it depends.
Yeah, it depends. All right, we're going to move on to the other part of our coverage. Before I do that, though, it is 1-1 into the first, and the Texans are actually winning 7-0, 8 minutes into the first quarter. So there we go. A little update on everyone managing the games. All right, so we've read a lot about the value of the strategic, what that actually is. So how do we get there? How do we become that strategic CISO that should not report to the CIO? And how do we as a CIO get to the right level? And what do we do? And what does it maybe show, or giving him an example of what it's not, what happens when you do have that, and how that differentiates. So let's first start on kind of developing those strategic and transformative skills and capabilities. So Maria, through your career, you've worked at a couple of different places. You've met and done a lot of different things. What have you done, and what would you recommend to others to try and move the needle in their own careers to be strategic and transformative?
Well, hopefully I've modeled the behavior that I'd like them to follow, at least the people that have come up through my organization. But, as far as getting engagement with the business, it's always started with trying to understand what the business is aspiring to do. What is their strategy? Understanding that first. And then every department, whether it's IT, the CFO's organization, operations, whoever, they have their own element of that strategy that they're trying to fulfill in service of the overall strategy. So having that dialogue is like, okay, are we all on the same page about what the company strategy is, and then what is your part, what is your element of that strategy? What do you need to accomplish to help the company achieve its overall strategy or mission? So having those conversations and showing people how to have that level of engagement with the business to then create a plan in terms of what's most important to help them get there. And also, what are the expected outcomes? And these are business outcomes, not IT outcomes that you've got to have that discussion about. So it's a business conversation. That's what I would say it is.
Daniel, same question on the CISO side. What have you done to develop yourself?
I think the first thing that I have considered is the risk appetite of the organization and their culture. If their risk appetite is very high, they don't care that much about security and integration of IT with security. So it's impossible to build a robust program that put together governance, risk compliance, policies, procedures that can drive the business forward. Places where their risk appetite is lower, they tend to support the management or stakeholders, tend to support these ideas. So you are able to share the ideas, share your vision, and you do a lot of business communication. You become pretty much used car salesman to be able to get everybody on board. So the risk appetite is key to everything you do as a CISO.
So being able to really understand that risk that the organization is ready to accept is a key part from your perspective on that. Right? And Tony, what have you done to develop yourself over your career to be sitting here today considered a strategic and transformative CIO?
Well, when I look back, there's different things. There's different stages in life, right? The first one to me was, I was in a role where we were growing the business internationally, and we were starting doing a lot of due diligence of the acquisitions, and I didn't understand a single thing of what they were talking about. So I had to go back to school, start working on my MBA, learning the business language so I could participate in those meetings. Second part of it is like, and I have done this in every company, I do two things. I work at the lines. If it's like in this company, I was riding the truck with the people who deliver the medical equipment. When I was working for WCA Waste, I was riding the trash truck. I needed to understand how the company actually works in order to understand where we wanted to go. So learn the business, educate yourself, and the other thing which a lot of us are very afraid of is going to the CEO and say, can you coach me for 15 minutes a week? So I have done it all the time where I go to my boss and or if it's not my, actually at TPC group when I was over here, I was reporting to the CFO and the CFO reporting to the CEO. So I went to the CEO, I went on the elevator and said like, hey, can you give me 15 minutes of your time? So I can hear from him directly what he wanted to do in the company so I can actually apply it towards that direction. And he came back and told me, I'm not going to give you 15 minutes one time. We're going to have 15 minutes every week. So that helped me tremendously in my career to start thinking about the way they were thinking. And the other thing is, I don't like to take no for an answer, and I hate status quo. If I go to a company, this is how we always done it, it's the first thing that goes out the window. And from what I do with my teams, we have a monthly IT service meeting. From the information that we provide, I generate the slides that go to the board. But my team knows the company financials to the dot. So they know exactly where we're doing operations and sales, accounting, HR, so they know exactly where we're going. So when I come with some crazy idea, they go like, oh, that's where we're going. So that's how I learn, and hopefully people will take it back.
No, that's great. I love that you asked your CEO for some coaching. And it takes a lot of you being able to check your own ego at the door in order to ask that. And I think they do really appreciate it. Done some similar things in my own career, so I think that's a great piece. Al, how about you? What have you done?
Yeah, so the key word is change agent, I guess. So when you get into that transformative area, you know, it's about personal change, or personal risk to people of the changes, I think, and it becomes incredibly political, right? Because you're really talking about potentially threatening their, you know, kind of they've got all these little things that they like, you know, it could be their job description, the relationship with their boss, how their team operates. You know, when you talk about transforming, we're going to look under all these rocks and see what works and what doesn't. I mean, that's very threatening too. It's way more threatening than if you've got a big project or you're building a pipeline or even doing an acquisition where a team might do what you guys do. And so you have to be able to deal with that personal risk. And one of the things that I noticed when I came in, because I was a risk manager, there's one list when you're a risk manager, and there's whatever's at the top of that list, you're going to attack it, and then you're just going to go down the list. And there were two lists, kind of. There was the IT list and the business list, you know, in a lot of cases. And I'd kind of go, well, the business person that's in control of that business list is probably at the top of your list. You know, it's usually leadership and behaviors. And you're dealing with modernizing that function because they wouldn't modernize probably before, and now it's a big priority. So dealing with the top of the list items, I think is, you know, something you got to do. You know, a lot of consulting firms come in, they won't be a change agent because they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. A lot of internal teams want to stay away from it with a 10-foot pole. You know, I used to tell them, you might not get fired. You probably won't get fired if you won't win any popularity contest, but you definitely will get fired if you ignore those issues and it become breaches or operational problems or project overruns. You know, it'll just be a year or two before you do, and that's why the average tenure is 3 years. And so you really have to kind of go after it like you're quality assurance or manufacturing or software development. You know, try to catch defects as close to inception as possible, I think. And I think that's being a change agent, is having the courage and the ability to go after those top level issues, usually people, behavior type, culture type things, and change that. And then the tech piece is usually not incredibly complicated. Yeah.
Well, one thing real quick, it's, that we mentioned, but you talk about risk, you talk about change, and just be true to yourself. Sometimes you're going to be in jobs where you want to be a change agent, you can be a change agent, the culture is not there. You have to be true to yourself, you may not be in the right place. And that's a tough decision to take, but at the same time is, where do you want to go, where do you want to take these companies, how do you want to be transformational if they're not going to let you be transformational.
No, that's a good point, and not all organizations being able to have that self-awareness of where the organization is, where you are, how you fit in. Hopefully you've done a good enough job. Done a good enough job up front to figure that out in the interview process, maybe before you go.
50% of the time.
You guys, question?
I'd just like to make a comment, because I found sometimes when you feel frustrated, that if you can stop focusing on yourself and make a connection with somebody else in one of the other parts of the organization, like marketing or customer service, kind of meet them at the coffee shop, buy them a cup of coffee and talk about what are your biggest challenges. You know, is there something that you're really trying to solve? If you can figure out a way to solve an operational problem they've got or a goal they've got and add something on security at the same time, you just made it buddy and real help to you when you're trying to push something in the organization.
Absolutely, inserting yourself into those situations, finding, not waiting for them to come to you.
And not trying to take credit for it.
No.
Let them take the credit for it, but they know that you helped. There you go.
No, what I was going to say, you're absolutely right. It's also, you're always going to find someone in the organization who you're going to connect with. There's always one out there that you're going to be able to connect. One of the things that I think have been very helpful in my career is that I try to help to connect people with people. So I know that accounting is doing, I know that HR is doing something, and now they're going to clash. We just get together, like you said, have a cup of coffee, do something at lunch, and then you throw the topic a little bit in there, and they start talking, and then okay, you made the connection, you step away, and things happen.
You have something on that?
Yes, I agree. Most often, everywhere I go, I try to form a relationship with business process owners. These people, they know ins and outs of the organization. So I try to look for them in every single department and try to form a relationship with them. They become almost like my disciples. I try to preach the gospel to them to make sure they understand my vision and my goals. And I make sure, because a lot of times people think cybersecurity inhibits business productivity. So I have to give them the assurance that what I'm doing is going to balance security and availability of their services.
Help keep them in business,
yes.
Make it frictionless.
So just one comment, hopefully you guys agree with this. But when we talk about business owner, I don't think any of us is talking about an organizational chart or a title. I've been in organizations where the business owners for shipping and receiving were at the docks. They really were the ones who brought in the business. So by us helping them do their jobs, it elevated to the next levels and it became very easy for the rest of the organization. So business owner is not chief information officer, chief operating officer. It could be, I don't know, the customer service rep.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all over there and part of understanding the audience that you're working with. So as we think about being that strategic CIO and transformative CIO and CISO, and that we're capable of doing those things, and maybe the hiring team that brought you into the organization understands that, made that your mandate, knows that, but that doesn't mean everybody else in the organization does. And maybe they're used to IT running in a different way and they have a different vision. How do you, and I want to get this part in two different ways, how do we market that we can do that? How do we demonstrate within the organization that we are capable of doing that and we need to, whether it's strengthening the relationships, being seen differently, how do we get that word out? How do we market? How do we show that in the organization? Then I want to flip it on the other side as you're trying to look for that next opportunity or you're aspiring to wherever that is to go. How do you market that externally so that those organizations are looking at you as someone who they want when they say, hey, I've got this job description posting here and it's got to be this strategic and transfer. How do they know that they're going to call Maria or Ken or Daniel or Antonio or Al related to that? So I'm going to start with you, Maria. How do you market that first internally?
How do I market that? Market myself or that
Market
I'm
yourself.
transformative? Okay.
Yourself and the team, really.
I mean, honestly, what we have to do is make sure that the business understands that you understand the business, right? You're not there to show off your IT skills or, to demonstrate that how much you know. You should be, in my opinion, you should come in and be humble. And the first order of what that you should do is learn the business, spend as much time with the business, spend like Antonio mentioned, ABS is a classification society. Go with the servers, go on board a ship and see what they do. Really, make that your top priority, and then understand where the business is going. So before you come in bragging about yourself, come in as somebody who's just really eager to learn and really understand the business first. And then, ask good probing questions about what they want to do and what they want to achieve, or where the tough problems lie, and make notes of that. And that really, when I joined ABS, and I will do that again, is the first thing I did is bring my team together and develop some guiding principles together. Like, what do we like about our organization? What do we not like? What do we want to change? What do we want to be known for? And then what are the things that should be our highest priorities? And then that becomes sort of our true north. And we always go back to those things. Whenever there's any confusion, we go back to what we decided were going to be our guiding principles. And so I think that sets alignment on the team. And it also sets you up with being somebody that's there to be a partner to the other people that own the phone.
And we're running out of
We're running out of time. I thought you told us we had 3 hours.
No.
All right, well, we'll wrap it up. Anyone, let's shift it to a marketing for the outside. How do you get that if you're looking for the next role?
Marketing from the outside actually is a reflection of the marketing and the results from the inside. It is really what you do, and believe me, your competitors take notice of what you're doing and how your company is moving along. It is incredible that, for example, in my most current job where I'm right now, we came up with a new in-house developed ERP. We marketed saying like this, the next thing for our partners. Everybody thought it was going to be very complicated. We push it to our customers. We acquire another company, and on top of that, what our customers are telling our competition, I like those guys better. We're solving their problems. We're helping them help their patients. So I really don't have to say anything. The work that my team is doing, the work we're doing as a management team, the work we're doing as a company following our founder's vision and mission is just a reflection that goes to the outside, and it gets noticed by the rest.
Very good. Go ahead.
Yes, I use vendor management process. The vendors, they sell to all your competitors. Indirectly, they will tell you what they sold them, what they are doing. A lot of the times, the CISOs don't like to talk to vendors, but I enjoy talking to vendors because I learn a lot of things they are doing with other competitors. And I take that idea and enhance that idea and do it better. So that's what I do.
Very good. Go ahead.
So my advice would be that anybody that might be interested in looking for a job, you should look at your resume, and instead of talking about the things projects that you completed or things that you delivered, reword it and say what you did, what outcome it provided the business. What did the business get out of the things that you did? Because that's really what they want to know.
All right, Rob, you heard Rob, we're out of time, so there's a quick wrap up. Just a brief sentence or two, closing guidance or advice on the topic. We'll start with you, Al.
2 sentences.
2 sentences, not seconds.
I was just thinking about what we were just talking about. It's about results. If you can be as polished, you can say all sorts of great things about yourself. You don't get results, if people are dealing with all sorts of infrastructure issues or cyber issue in your company, other people outside of that company are going to find out about it. And so it's about results first and foremost, earning the right to be able to do something transformational or different.
Great, thank you. Antonio, 2 seconds. 1, 2.
Pressure. Results, be truthful to yourself, be honest, be humble, and most importantly, be an agent of change for the people who work around you?
For me, it's about resiliency. Cybersecurity is very dynamic. Things happen every day. Your job is to make sure that you are protecting the network, and in case you go down, how quickly you are able to recover from whatever happens and keep moving on. So that's just me.
Hey, don't forget that you're a technologist in the end, so, be an anticipator of innovation, constantly study what's coming and think about how that applies to your company.
So wrapping, I want to say thank you to all my great panelists. Thank you to Elevate Exchange for having us. Thanks to our sponsors. If I added one little thing there about that, it's no one cares about the technology. It's about the outcomes that technology enables. And if you really want to be strategic and transformative, whether you're a CIO or a CISO, it's understanding from how it's operating on the other side of the firewall. That's where the business transformation comes from, not in the nuts and bolts of what we may have done earlier in our career. So Robin, thank you for letting us, and now we'll finish up. And the Astros are still winning 1-1, but the Texans are tied 7-7.
You'll take that away from the Astros, obviously, but
One?
just.
What? They're not winning.
They're not winning.
Oh, they're tied.
I was under pressure.
Yeah, they're winning, they're
I
tied.
like the fact that we win at one
Shame
point.
on you.
Tie
Okay.
goes to the Houston.
I gotta tell you, this group is probably the most brave. I mean, I've known these guys forever, and they're very brilliant. Anyway, I want to thank you all for being here. We still have some time to eat, drink, and be merry, and some more food is about ready to come out. So please take the time to get to know each other, be really intimate and get to know each other, because that's what Elevate Exchange is all about. The whole culture is different from every other culture, so that you can improve yourself from knowing each other. So please have fun. Thank you for being here, and our next event won't be till February, but we'll let you know then, okay? Thank you. And thanks, Maria, for taking on the role of chairperson.